He's actually a bear. Huge paws, a massive head. But somehow he believes he's a public servant. Not the kind that wears a badge or carries a radio, but the kind who shows up when you least expect him and acts like everything that happens around here is his business. We named him Sheriff. Yeah, a little on the nose maybe, but once you've seen a 450-pound grizzly calmly inspect a broken gate, nudge a lost dog back toward the trail, and plant himself in front of a speeding ATV like he's issuing a ticket, the name sticks. But the kind who shows up when you least expect him and acts like everything that happens around here is his business. We named him Sheriff. Yeah, a little on the nose maybe, but once you've seen a 450-pound grizzly calmly inspect a broken gate, nudge a lost dog back toward the trail, and plant himself in front of a speeding ATV like he's issuing a ticket, the name sticks. We live in Clearwater Ridge, a pine-thick patch of wilderness, tucked above a town so small you can fit its entire council in a fishing boat. My name's Daniel, and I'm the senior ranger stationed here with my nephew Luca. Luca's only 23, full of the kind of energy that makes you believe things can change. Me, I've been here too long to count, through blizzards, droughts, and one especially confusing summer with a moose that thought it was a cow. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared us for Sheriff. He wasn't always Sheriff. When we first found him, he was barely breathing, crumpled beneath a pile of slash on the northern fire trail. Someone had set an illegal snare, and he dragged it until he collapsed. His back paw was a mess, the cable buried deep, infection already setting in. Luca spotted him first. We were doing routine trail maintenance. I remember the way Luca's voice cracked over the radio, how I dropped the shovel and sprinted. I thought we were too late. We called Dr. Hale, the wildlife vet from Larkspur. He arrived in a chopper, sedated the bear, and winched him up in a stretcher. "We'll try," he said quietly, "but don't get attached." But that's the thing. We were already attached. You don't lock eyes with an animal fighting to breathe and walk away the same. He spent weeks at the Wildlife Rehab Center, then months more in the infirmary cabin we'd built behind our outpost. That whole time, Luca never left his side. He'd read to him, talk about his classes, sometimes just sit in silence while the wind scratched at the windows. One night, when I walked in with fresh bandages, I caught the bear, still half lame, shuffle to the edge of his enclosure and rest his forehead against the bars near Luca's boots. That was the moment I knew. He'd chosen us. Releasing him wasn't an option. His paw healed, but not well enough for the wild. He couldn't sprint, couldn't climb. He'd be dead in a week. The state offered sanctuary space, but Sheriff wouldn't eat when Luca wasn't there. He'd pace and huff, ignore food for days. So we filed the permits, made the case, and got special designation. He could stay with us under structured wildlife guardianship. Basically, he'd live free range on the outpost land, supervised and safe. What we didn't expect was how seriously he'd take the guardian part. It started small. Sheriff would sit near the gate when hikers passed through, like he was checking credentials. He learned which of our trucks meant trail crews and which meant guests. If a vehicle parked where it shouldn't, he'd nose it gently until it moved. If someone left trash, he'd haul it back to the bins. We caught him once dragging an empty chip bag 300 yards back to camp like he was filing evidence. Then came the storm. A freak blizzard in April. Took everyone by surprise. We had 2 volunteers still out on Ridge Loop and 0 contact. Luca and I were about to head out when Sheriff started pacing by the trailhead, low and steady. He wouldn't stop. Finally I said, "You want to lead us, big guy?" Sheriff turned and started walking. Not running. Walking. He knew. 12 minutes in, we found the volunteers, huddled under an overhang, one of them barely conscious. We hauled them into the sled, bundled them up, radioed for evac. Sheriff didn't gloat, just sat back, nose in the wind, and let the snow melt on his shoulders. Since that day, the volunteers call him Deputy. He patrols at dawn and dusk now, takes the lower ridge in the morning, the creek path before bed. If Luca's out late, Sheriff waits by the porch until the headlights appear. If I'm sick or dragging, he'll sit outside my window until I get up. He doesn't break things, doesn't roar. He doesn't need to. His presence alone is enough to quiet the rowdiest campsite or send raccoons scattering. One summer afternoon, a family parked their camper in a restricted meadow. Sheriff ambled over before I even reached the trail. The dad stepped out and froze. I expected panic, but the bear just sat, stared at him. After 30 seconds of silence, the dad said, "We'll move." They did. Sheriff watched until they turned the engine and backed out, then walked away like it was just another shift ending. We've had complaints, people calling the ranger hotline saying a bear is stalking us. We check. Every time it's Sheriff doing rounds. We've posted signs now. If the bear follows you, congratulations, you're under his protection. Kids love him. They draw him in chalk outside the outpost, holding stop signs or wearing a ranger hat. One kid asked if he had a badge. Luca said it's invisible, like all the best ones. But Sheriff's not just a town novelty. He feels things. When my brother died last fall, I went quiet, stopped shaving, barely spoke. One night, I sat by the water tower and watched the stars shake in the lake. Sheriff appeared without a sound. He didn't touch me, didn't nudge, just laid down behind me, warm and steady. We watched the sky together. That was the first night I slept through till morning. Sometimes I catch Luca staring at him like he still can't believe it. "Do you think he knows what he is?" he asked once. "I think he knows exactly what he's not," I said. "He's not alone anymore." Sheriff's tongue hangs out sometimes, not because he's tired, just there. Like his body forgot where it belongs. It flops sideways when he snores, which he does, often and loud. You'd think thunder rolled through the walls. But it's comforting now. Like hearing boots on gravel. Like knowing someone strong is nearby. This winter, Luca left for a conference. First time since Sheriff arrived that the two of them were separated more than a day. We didn't tell the bear, just packed quietly. That morning, Sheriff sat by Luca's truck. When it pulled out, he stayed. Didn't move for hours. Wouldn't eat. Wouldn't patrol. He just stared at the bend in the road where taillights vanished. That night, I tried everything. Walks, fish, even played the radio station Luca usually listens to. Nothing worked. Finally, I left the cabin door open and went to bed. Around midnight, I felt the floorboards creak. Sheriff climbed onto the porch, curled by the door, and sighed like the weight of the whole ridge had dropped on his back. When Luca came back 2 days later, Sheriff stood up slow, walked over, and pressed his giant head against Luca's chest. No drama, no growl, just relief. The kind of quiet reunion that made your throat tighten. No big show, just the kind of moment you witness once and remember forever. After that, he didn't leave Luca's side for a full day. Sat outside the bathroom, waited outside the shower, rode along in the truck to get feed from the supply store. You'd have thought they were glued together. You can't teach that. You can't train a bear to care. He chooses it. Every day, every patrol, every breath. Sheriff isn't tame. He's not a mascot. He's wild. But he's ours. And we're his. And he proves it in the tiniest, most unexpected ways. Like the time Luca tripped hauling lumber and barked his shin hard against a cinder block. Before I could even react, Sheriff was at his side. He didn't do anything dramatic. Just stood there, shoulder to shoulder, like he was offering himself as a wall to lean on. When Luca limped back to the cabin, Sheriff matched his pace, slow and steady, step for step. Or the evening the power went out, and the wind howled like a pack of wolves in the hills. Sheriff sat in front of the wood stove the whole time, just watching us, like he was keeping count, making sure none of us vanished into the dark. We didn't sleep much that night. But we weren't scared either. You can't explain to outsiders what that presence means. What it's like to live with a creature who doesn't speak your language, but understands more than most people you've known. Who doesn't need orders, just the bond. He's not a pet. He doesn't come when called. He doesn't stay because we feed him. He stays because in some way, none of us fully understand, he believes this is where he's supposed to be. He knows when the truck engine starts if it's Luca behind the wheel. He knows which drawer the treats are in, even though no one ever showed him. He waits for the school bus even on weekends, just in case someone forgot to check the calendar. He doesn't miss a thing. Sheriff isn't a symbol. He's not here to make us feel better about ourselves. He's here because he made a choice. And that choice makes us better, makes us pay attention, makes us slower to anger and quicker to listen. Makes us remember that trust is something wild things offer only when they believe you've earned it. He's wild, but he's ours. And we're his. Visitors still ask if we're scared. If we worry he'll snap one day, remember what he is. We always answer the same. He never forgot what he is, but he also knows what he became. Not because we asked it, because he decided it. And he stays. Every window's been left open at some point. The gate's rusted enough, he could flatten it in seconds. He could vanish. But he doesn't. He chooses this place. These people. This job. It's his now. He could return to the forest any time. The wild calls to him constantly, on the wind, in the scent trails across the yard, in the rustle of raccoons at midnight. But Sheriff acts like he doesn't hear it. Or maybe he does, and just doesn't answer. He's got work to do. A kid to escort to the school bus. A neighbor's trash can to guard from the local opossum. A fence post to lean against like a tired old man who's seen too much, but still shows up anyway. One night last spring, an injured fox limped into the compound. We didn't see it at first. Sheriff did. He stood over it, not a sound. We approached carefully, expecting him to scare it off, but he stepped back, gave us space, and waited until we scooped it up and carried it to the clinic. Then he turned and walked toward the tree line like his shift was done. The next morning, he was sitting by the porch again, like always. Watching the yard, ears rotating slightly with every sound. He never asked what happened to the fox, never followed us to the clinic or checked the charts or sniffed the carrier. He just knew his part: locate, alert, protect, then move on. Quiet professionalism. No need for thanks. That's the kind of bear he is. The kind who notices when the screen door doesn't latch right and nudges it closed with his snout. The kind who plants himself between the toddler and the creek without making a scene. The kind who disappears for an hour after a thunderstorm, then returns soaked and muddy with a broken tree branch tangled around his leg like he's been clearing the trail himself. Every paw print on this land says, I was here. I protected this. Every low huff in the distance reminds us, you're not alone. I've got this. We weren't looking for a bear. We didn't need a deputy. But Sheriff found us when we didn't know we needed him. When the world felt heavier than our shoulders could hold. And every day since, through fire season and flood warnings, through silent snowfalls and long summer sunsets, he's reminded us that the wild isn't just about surviving. It's about noticing, showing up, making sure the little ones get home safe. Making sure the storm drain stays clear. Making sure no one forgets that we all belong to something bigger than ourselves. He doesn't clock out, doesn't demand payment, doesn't hold a grudge when we forget to refill the peanut butter jar. He's never once acted like this life owes him anything. And still, he gives. He gives his presence, his watchfulness, his silent trust that we'll do our part too, that we'll care for the forest the way he cares for us. That will fix the broken fence post, mend the screen door, carry the hurt foxes when they limp into our yard. Sometimes it's about choosing to care, and that caring, real quiet, bone-deep caring, is the truest kind of service there is.